Good morning, beautiful people. I hope you all are thriving, not just surviving. Today, if I seem a little bit low energy, that is because I just have a massive headache, so you will have to forgive me on that front. But we're also going to be talking about something that's really, this is way more nuanced than I actually anticipated. I had heard about this probably like Friday afternoon. I had heard about everything happening with Judge Dugan in Wisconsin, and I heard about this and I was just shaking my head at it, and I started learning more and more about the situation, and it's way more complex than I had initially thought. And I don't want people to immediately look at this and be like, well, who's right, who's wrong? And the reason why is because in my analysis, there's wrongdoing possibly on both ends, but also when I look at this was unnecessary. It didn't need to go down this way. That's kind of my big takeaway. The fact that this has happened the way that it has been so like reckless, unnecessary, and it's basically an overreach. But we're going to be getting into all the different details here. I learned a lot doing research on this specific story. Now, people are going to look at this and say, oh, it's about immigration. Honestly, looking at this situation really isn't about any stuff with immigration. This is really about the balance between the executive and the judicial, and when they're supposed to be checking each other. Also an overreach of one or the other. And when just looking at this, I'm just shaking my head because this whole thing could have been avoided. It could have been avoided, and it wasn't. So we're going to break everything down here. So there are lots of people who are upset with the arrest of Judge Hannah Dugan, and rightfully so in some cases. So we're going to be breaking all of it down. I love all of you. Shout out to my mods in here. Hello, Kate, Ellie, good morning. Hello. Please make sure to send some likes. I love all of you. I'm here to explain what has all happened. It's way more complex than I initially thought. That's a big takeaway here. This case with Hannah Dugan is way more complex than what I actually had realized when I heard about it. That being said, it's important to understand the nuances of the situation. Before you start to go down into whatever things, let's fully understand all of it. Yeah, honestly, Stephanie. So I appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure to send some likes. I'm not going to be looking at the chat here, but I'm just going to report all of this. Before you start to rage type in the chat, just listen to all the information that I'm going to be breaking down, okay? Hundreds rally in Milwaukee against Trump administration's unprecedented arrest of a judge. We reject this lawless escalation against an immigration judge who appears to be showing common sense and humane approach to immigrants, said one campaigner. Going forward here. So hundreds of people rallied in Wisconsin's largest city on Saturday to protest the Trump administration's arrest of Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan on what critics say were baseless charges of felony obstruction after she allegedly helped an undocumented immigrant evade arrest. Now, I want to point out that, like everything we've been talking about with all the different cases regarding immigration, it's important to understand what things are claimed to be and alleged to be. They're not proven. It's an allegation. So just like when someone accuses someone of something, you still have to go through the process and bring evidence and go through due process. Yeah? FBI agents arrested Dugan, 65 years old, on Friday following an investigation accusing, which similar to an allegation, accusing her of escorting an undocumented man and his attorney through her courtroom jury door after learning that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement's agents, ICE, showed up to arrest him. The protesters were shouting slogans like "No ICE," "No KKK," "No Fascist USA," "No hate, no fear, immigrants are welcome here," etc. And we're going to be breaking this all down here. Just listen for a second. I've never heard of a state court judge being arrested by the federal government because she chose to control her own courtroom. This is unprecedented, said Sarah Dady, an immigration attorney who traveled more than 90 miles from Rockford, Illinois, to attend the demonstration. Wisconsin State Representative Ryan Clancy, a Democrat from, I don't know if he's 19 or if it was from the 19th district or something like that, said, quote, "The judiciary acts as a check to unchecked executive power, and functioning democracies do not lock up judges." I hope that we can all be as brave as Judge Dugan was, Clancy added. Janan Najib, one of the leaders of the Wisconsin Coalition for Justice in Palestine, told rally-goers the courtroom is not a hunting ground for ICE. It is a sanctuary. When our government turns our courtroom into traps, they are betraying the very laws they claim to defend. So let's break down what happened here. I'm just going to lay out some of the facts, okay? I appreciate every single one of you. If you're trying to get my attention in the chat, I'm not seeing it. I literally have the chat hidden, so save your breath. For those people who are like, okay, what actually happened? Don't give me any opinion, don't give me an analysis, just tell me what happened. So the case stemmed around this guy named Eduardo Flores Ruiz, who has been accused, I believe, of battery or any sort of assault. He is an undocumented person. He was actually previously deported in 2013. Okay? Now, you say, well, he's an undocumented immigrant. Yes. He is accused of those awful things. Yes. I also want to point out that every single person, including Donald Trump, even undocumented immigrants under our U.S. Constitution, have the right to due process, have the right to have their case heard. Donald Trump had the right for his cases to be heard. So does every single person that is accused of a crime. So it's important to note that we can't just pick and choose when due process matters. So what ended up happening here? Well, Judge Hannah Dugan was in court, and the guy, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, was being, they were in court figuring out everything that happened, and the ICE agents, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, came in and they said that they had an administrative warrant to arrest this guy. Well, if you know anything about how these warrants work, there are two different main types of warrants when it comes to judicial court proceedings and stuff like that. There's a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant. Now, they both have different purposes. Under the court of law, it is not right. I don't think it's like illegal, but it's not right to go in if you are Homeland Security or ICE and try and arrest someone in court using an administrative warrant. Because a court is protected from that. So basically, you had the government, you had the executive branch overreaching and trying to do something where they were trying to arrest this person in the middle of their trial. Then the judge says, you have to have a different kind of warrant for that. Can you please, not do that? And then she says, okay, well, obviously we're going to have to redo this some other time because ICE is trying to come in here and arrest you, even though they don't have the right kind of warrant. So allegedly, the judge decided to take the alleged abuser dude and escort him out a back hallway. But also that back hallway led to public areas where there were ICE. So it's not like there was any established intent to try and let that person escape. And establishing that intent would be difficult to do so. That being said, it's not inconceivable, but it might be tough to do that. All of that being said, when you're looking at this case, if the judge happened to have done that, it would be obstructing court proceedings. Though, if you're putting yourself in that position, it's like, well, if ICE is going in there with the wrong kind of warrant, trying to take control of what you do in your courtroom, obstructing your ability to do the due process guaranteed to you under the Constitution, then you might have done the same thing. So it becomes way more nuanced than most people actually understand. So you have all these people that are now protesting, being like, hey, this is unprecedented, this is an overreach, this is a huge escalation of power. And you also have these people that are saying, good, this is absolutely fine. But at the same time, when I'm looking at the situation, I see wrongdoing on both ends, possibly. So that's my analysis here, and let me get to it a little bit further. I do want to point out that the executive branch has undergone a major escalation of power that I think is very unnecessary. And I think it can be really, really dangerous because it doesn't set a good example moving forward. So a day after Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan's arrest on felony charges, Milwaukee's activist groups organized a second protest April 26th, this time outside the FBI field office in St. Francis, to demand Dugan be released and her charges dropped. Representative Democrat Ryan Clancy, a Democrat of Milwaukee County Supervisor Justin Belinsky, shared some statements in support of Dugan to a crowd of more than 200 people. Clancy said that Dugan was right to tell federal immigration officials they needed a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant, to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz, an undocumented Mexican immigrant. By the way, the person in this case, this Eduardo Ruiz guy, he was previously deported in 2013, and he also came back and also was accused, not proven, but accused of doing things like doing battery, maybe some other assault. I have to double check. So it's important to note that it's really not even about it's not even about the case matter at hand. It's about what happened. And one of the biggest things to point out in this case, if you have no other takeaway, there is a big dispute between how this all went down. Let me simplify it. Let's say that you are accused of doing something awful, and you go to court, and whether or not you did it or not, no, you have the right to due process. You doesn't matter if you are an undocumented person, a legal non-resident, or a citizen in our country. Everyone within the lands and the sovereignty of the United States have right to due process. So if you are accused of a crime, if you are accused of doing something wrong, you have the right as a person within the jurisdiction of the United States to have your case heard in front of a judge. That's one of the main core foundings of our country. Again, for any sort of MAGA right-winger in here, that doesn't just apply to citizens. That also applies to legal non-residents and also non-citizens. Now, that doesn't mean that they're then free or that they are not held accountable for what they've done. It just means that they are awarded the opportunity to have their case be heard. That is a core tenet of our Constitution. If you do not believe that should be a core tenet of our Constitution, you're literally going against the Constitution. Just saying. So if you do not believe, if you say, oh, well, I'm a citizen, I can get that, but you're a non-citizen, you don't get that, you're literally going against the Constitution. FYI. So due process isn't just for citizens, it's for everyone. And if you erode at that, then you pick and choose whose concerns matter, which was a grave concern for our founders. So that all being said, when this case was being heard, Hannah Dugan, the judge, was hearing out the case of this guy who has been alleged of doing some bad things, has been previously deported. His record it's not helpful for him. The judge is literally doing her job with going through due process, hearing out the case, all of that. ICE goes in there, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, with something called an administrative warrant. Well, let me just tell you, administrative warrants are different from judicial warrants. Administrative warrants are issued by something like the Department of Homeland Security or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they are saying that we're purporting a document to arrest a person of suspected violations of immigration laws. Now, these are not signed by a neutral magistrate or judge, but rather an immigration officer like ICE. An ICE administrative warrant is not a judicial warrant, and they do not give ICE officials authority to enter a place where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy without consent. So if this happens, state clearly that you do not consent to them entering, but do not physically resist. I want to point out that the government came with the wrong kind of warrant for this guy's arrest. If you wanted to arrest this guy, which if there's evidence to show, great, okay? You have to have something called a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant is an official court order signed by a judge or a magistrate that authorizes a search of private property, seizure, or arrest based on probable cause that a crime is being or has been committed. This will specify the address to be specify the specific address to be searched, all of that stuff. I want to point out that it is wrongful for ICE agents to go to a courtroom with an administrative warrant seeking to arrest someone. That is a big overstep of power, because not only are you obstructing the due process, but you also came with the wrong kind of warrant. You cannot, as a police officer, go in. So let me just say, Clancy said that it was right for Dugan to tell federal immigration officials they needed a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. So you already have the government, the executive branch, the FBI making a huge error because they don't have the right kind of warrant to then carry out the arrest of this person. Now, I am not saying, I'm just pointing out there that the executive branch had overstepped in that matter. Now, in response, the judge, Hannah Dugan, if it has been ruled that her intention was to shield that person from being arrested, then yes, that would constitute a crime. The same way that Luigi Mangione going through and pew-pewing someone, okay, if that was his intent, then yes, it is a crime. So, but put it in context. They come in without the right type of warrant, seeking to undermine your ability to carry out justice that you have said under oath that you would do, as a judge, that you will abide by the Constitution. And they're going through and they are undermining your authority to carry out and do your job. You might resort to what Hannah Dugan allegedly did. That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right at all. But also, their accusation of her obstructing justice is very flimsy. Even on, like grounds in a criminal complaint. Because it's all about what other people said it looks like. You have to find intent. So let me just read out further here. I appreciate every single one of you. I know this is a lot to take in. So, again, as Ryan Clancy, a Democrat of Milwaukee, and Milwaukee County Supervisor Justin Belinsky shared statements in support of Dugan to a crowd of more than 200 people. Clancy said Dugan was right to tell federal immigration officials they needed a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. And again, judicial warrants, those go through, and it's really important. These will be presented during during judicial hearings. So a judicial warrant is an official court order signed by a judge or magistrate that authorizes a search of private property, seizure, or arrest based on probable cause that a crime is being or has been committed. Now, in this case, the FBI came with an administrative warrant, which you cannot go through with an administrative warrant seeking to arrest someone mid-hearing. Milwaukee defense attorney Raymond Dal Osto said Dugan should have never been arrested or charged in the first place. That's total BS. It's politically motivated to use her as a scapegoat and a target. Dal Osto said that she had taken down, he had been taken down clients down side doors in the past, and that should not have been seen as nefarious. Several legal experts said that Dugan's actions appeared to be reasonable efforts to protect the integrity of the courtroom. Others said there may have been better ways to handle the situation. None of the 5 experts interviewed by the Journal Sentinel before Dugan's arrest thought she should have been charged with a federal crime. Lori Levinson, a professor at Loyola Law School and former federal prosecutor, said April 24th that she believes Dugan's actions are problematic, but not necessarily criminal. After news broke of Dugan's arrest and charges on April 25th, Levinson said that actions appear to be the federal government's way of sending a political message. I was a federal prosecutor, she said. The fact that they arrested her, it's so heavy-handed. Without all the details, Levinson said it's difficult to analyze how Dugan's case will play out. If there's evidence that Dugan intended to help the defendant evade arrest, that may cross the line into a criminal act, Levinson said. It is also possible that Dugan had other reasons to show the defendant out a different door. No one should jump at the assumption that the judge's actions were an obstruction of justice. Levinson also criticized FBI Director Kash Patel's social media post on April 25th that stated Dugan, quote, intentionally misdirected federal agents away. She pointed out that the Department of Justice has directives against cases publicly and showing pretrial prejudice. Posting this raises its own questions about what the intention of the FBI is, Levinson said. Milwaukee attorney Stephen Kravitz, also a former federal prosecutor, said that prosecutors have to prove that Dugan had intent to violate immigration law. After learning of the charges against Dugan, Kravitz said the federal government had overstepped. Now, whether ICE agents carried out a judicial or administrative warrant matters. This is what I was talking about earlier. The type of warrant that ICE agents presented at the courthouse is also a factor, legal experts say. According to court filings, ICE agents told the FBI that they showed Dugan an arrest warrant, an administrative warrant. Administrative warrants are different than judicial warrants. These two types of warrants carry different levels of authority. Administrative warrants are not signed by judges and do not give law enforcement officers permission to enter private spaces. Let me say it again. Administrative warrants do not give law enforcement officers permission to enter private spaces. The reason why many legal experts are saying that this was an overstepping of power to arrest was because Judge Dugan was following her job, and they went in and they tried to use an administrative warrant to arrest the person that she was overseeing the due process of. So basically, think about it like this. I'll simplify it for you. You have the judge, this lady named Hannah Dugan, okay? There's this guy who's been alleged of a crime. Doesn't have a great record, okay? It's really not even about that as the scenario. You have law enforcement come in with the wrong type of warrant seeking to take your client, seeking to take the person that you are overseeing the trial for out of the courtroom. And you're like, you have the wrong type of warrant. Please go through the proper mechanism. We're here trying to do the due process. I'm trying to analyze whether I need to charge this guy for the things that he's done. Why don't you just trust me as the judge to handle this situation? Well, the FBI seeks to try and just take this person out anyway. So you have the executive branch overstepping their authority, inhibiting the judicial branch, inhibiting the judge for being able to carry out her job under the Constitution. That objectively, that's what happens. So in response, the judge says, okay, screw this, takes the person that she was, the person who she was, what's his name? Eduardo Ruiz, that guy that she was overseeing the trial for, and take him out a side door. Now, who knows if she was actually trying to go through and help him evade arrest? I am not quite sure. It is possible. It's also probable that she didn't do that. She just wanted to take him out that side door. It doesn't mean anything. You have to establish intent. That all being said, the judge was literally backed in a corner. You had this outside force coming in and superseding your authority. So basically, the executive branch oversteps into the judicial. The judicial branch says, okay, screw you. You're literally just overstepping and crapping on my whole job. So I'm not saying that it's possible that Hannah Dugan, the judge, I'm not saying that it's impossible she broke the law. And I'm not defending it either. I'm also just saying that when in this scenario you had the Trump administration under the FBI going in with the wrong kind of warrant, obstructing this person being able to carry out, like she was literally going through in this case and she was hearing out, okay, there's this thing, this part of the battery, this part of the assault. How many years do we need to give this person, or do we just need to deport them? Literally, the Trump administration is just going through and just so eager to deport people without them even having their day in court. That's what this is. They're not, and think about what kind of example this sets going forward. This isn't even about the case. It's not even about immigration. What this shows, let's completely replace the whole situation with a different example. So let's say instead of Judge Hannah Dugan, you had Judge Joe Schmo. Okay? Judge Joe Schmo, who is the judge in a case of Harrison Carpenter. Harrison Carpenter has been accused of battery or SA, sexual assault, or any sort of like domestic violence. Okay? Judge Joe Schmo is overseeing this case. You have Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. The police come in and they have the wrong type of warrant. And they say, we're just going to arrest this Harrison Carpenter dude. Well, you as the judge are midway through going through your constitutionally, you're doing your job in court. And they're just seeking to take away someone without your approval in your courtroom. Now, again, they're just following Judge Joe Schmo says, okay, if you're going to arrest someone in my courtroom, you need a judicial warrant that I have to sign off on. Because we're going through and we're doing due process. That's how it always is done. So this isn't even about trying to protect it's not about trying to like shield people who are bad. It's about the process. It's about the way that things went down. So let's then just say that Judge Joe Schmo says, okay, well, I don't want my person, the person that I'm litigating, to just be taken away because you're literally just coming in my courtroom and just shitting on everything that I'm doing. So I'm going to escort them out and maybe we can do this another time. So that would then be unlawful because then you are helping someone possibly evade arrest. But also put in context why. Why are you helping them evade arrest? Because they're coming through and just crapping on what you're doing, overstepping their authority. So if you want to look at this, scenario, this is my analysis here. There is wrongdoing possibly on both sides of this scenario. One, you have the government overreaching without proper documentation or authority to be able to go and arrest someone who, yes, probably did something bad, but we always have due process in this country. If you're accused of something, you have the right, even if you are guilty, you have the right to dispute it and have your case heard. If we erode due process for one person, then we erode it for everyone. Due process is something where it gives everyone the chance to have their case heard, have their story heard. Now, it's very possible that, and you're like, well, why do you protect due process for criminals? Well, how do you know they're a criminal? That's the thing. Have you ever been accused of something that you didn't do? Maybe not accused officially in like a court of law. But also, if/when that ever happens to you, you don't want just an accusation to then accusations are not evidence. And that's something I don't think the Trump administration understands. Accusations are not evidence. If there is an accusation of sexual assault, domestic violence, if there is an accusation of wrongdoing, XYZ, that's not proof. That's not evidence. That is an alleged claim that needs to be disputed, where you need to gather evidence. Everyone, non-citizens, legal non-citizens, undocumented immigrants, and yes, citizens deserve to have their case heard in court. And you say, oh, well, I don't really care about whatever XYZ undocumented immigrant that has possibly done crime. Okay, let's just say, for instance, that they were innocent. You're literally violating the rights for people to have their story heard. So when it's you next time, don't be complaining if people want to just completely take away your ability to have that heard. That all being said, the way that it went down, where the police come in and saying we have an administrative warrant, well, that's not the right type of warrant to then do an arrest in a courtroom. You need a judicial warrant. You need to have the judge sign off on that. This isn't a case about the wrongdoing of the individual at hand. This is about how the process goes and obstructing the ability for the judicial branch to carry out their ordinary business in order to have made sure we go through due process. So if you want to take away in this scenario, this judge, she basically possibly committed a crime by trying to take the person she was prosecuting, or she was overseeing the trial of, out the courtroom, possibly evading arrest. But, and that's bad. But put in context, the government came in with a wrong kind of warrant, seeking to just disrupt your whole trial, trying to stop you from doing your job. That's what the situation is here. It's way more complicated than I initially thought. For anyone that is like, oh, well, she intended to shield this dangerous undocumented immigrant because she wants to have crime in this country. No. This judge is like, the police came in and tried to literally disrupt my courtroom without the right proper documentation, seeking to take away the person that I'm overseeing the trial of. Yeah, I'm going to do whatever I can to stop them from just usurping my authority as a judge. Does that mean that she didn't break the law? No, it's very possible she did. It's very similar in my head to Luigi Mangione. Yes, Luigi Mangione did break the law. He did an awful thing. But put it in context. United Healthcare has made billions of dollars off of stripping people of the ability to then get basically profiting off of people's pain. Does that make what Luigi Mangione did right? No. Put it in context. Does kind of make sense why he might do that? That all being said, it's similar with Hannah Dugan. Doesn't make it right if she's found to help evade this person from law enforcement. But putting in context, the executive branch comes in, disrespects her courtroom, and comes in with the wrong kind of warrant, usurping her from doing her job, prosecuting him already. Literally going through, overseeing the trial of this person. Like, just to put it in context, this guy, who's an undocumented immigrant, was accused of doing battery and assault. The judge was going through and saying, okay, is there any evidence to show that this is happening or this is real? And if there is evidence, great. She would have put charges on him and he would have been locked away. And then ICE could have deported him if that was necessary. This judge is like, you're literally taking away my ability to do my job here. And so that's why she reacted this way. If you're a judge and the police come through without getting the proper documentation, just trying to usurp the ability for you to do your job, wouldn't you be pissed? Now, of course, and by the way, it's a quick little thing, I'm not even seeing the chat. So if you're trying to get my attention in the chat, I don't see it. I literally do these live streams and I don't see the chat because I've hidden it away. So if you're screaming at the top of your lungs, trying to get my attention, save your breath, move on. And also, before you decide like which side are you on, look at this objectively. Seek to be courageous and put yourself in the shoes of the other side for just a second. Put yourself in the shoes of the judge. If the police come through without the proper documentation, seeking to get rid of the person that you are overseeing the trial of, and they come through and they're basically, think of it as like, you're doing your job. You're doing your job at your place of business. And someone from another department just comes over and starts doing your job for you without your approval, going through and just like messing stuff up, making errors. Wouldn't you be kind of angry? Wouldn't you be kind of pissed? You'd be like, excuse you, that's not up to you. It's basically the executive branch trying to overstep what the judicial branch does. And they're doing it wrong. So you decide to maybe accidentally do some sort of physical or verbal assault of that person. Doesn't make what you did right, but understand why that would have happened. Does that make sense? So it doesn't then shield the judge from possibly doing wrong here, but put it in context. Does that all make sense? I'm briefly going to look at the chat here. I love the people that just scream at the top of their mouth, they scream at the top of their lungs like, gay. What does that have to do with the conversation, honey? I don't care about the context. Well, you should. You know why you don't care about the context? You will once it affects you. You will once it affects you. To the people who are like, well, I don't care about it. So you're saying that you don't care about due process until you have been accused of wrongdoing. And then people say that their accusation, I could accuse you of doing something wrong, of some really, really awful thing. How would you feel if I used my accusation as evidence to then have you arrested and charged? You'd be like, well, that's insane. That's what's happening in so many different areas. So this is more about the way that it went down rather than the substance of what it is. Bro, why don't you just talk like a normal person? Because I use a performative voice online just so I can get harassed by faceless commenters. And this is why I don't look at the chat. This is why I don't look at the chat. Because it's just full of people who have nothing substantive to say about this. Seriously, to those people, like, do you not, you literally do whatever you can to change the conversation. It's so silly. Like, you call me a beta male, yet I hop on here almost every single weekday and be harassed by people who make nonsense, like, comments that have literally nothing to do with the conversation. Sorry, I need to plug in my phone because it's getting on low battery. So when looking at this situation here, if you're looking for, oh, well, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, don't think of it that way. Don't think of it that way. This isn't like necessarily a right or wrong situation. It's important to put in okay. Sorry, did my live glitch out there for a second? My phone connected to the Bluetooth in my car, and I'm like, no, don't do that. So you have a lot of people who are angry, saying that this is an overreach, an overstep of power. And guess what? I agree. I agree that this is an overstep of power. Does that mean that the judge didn't do wrong in this situation? We'll see if that plays out in court. Let's see if there was the evidence to show that there was intent to do wrong. But again, when looking at this, she was literally just carrying out her job, and law enforcement comes in there and seeks to just usurp her authority. That would make me pissed and maybe do something like that. Anyway, so hundreds rally in Wisconsin and Milwaukee against Trump's administration's unprecedented arrest of a judge. So you have all these people that are rightfully pissed off, being like, look, these are baseless charges, and this is unacceptable. I've never heard of a state court judge being arrested by the federal government because she chose to control her own courtroom. This is unprecedented, said Sarah Dady, an immigration attorney who traveled more than 90 miles from Rockford, Illinois to attend the demonstration. The judiciary acts as a check to unchecked executive power, and functioning democracies do not lock up judges. The courtroom is not a hunting ground for ICE. It is a sanctuary. And let me also, to that point, I'm going to point something out here. Let's say that there is a case with an undocumented immigrant, and they're having their case heard before a judge for an asylum claim. Well, if this is allowed, if what happened with this case with Hannah Dugan, if that is seen as like, okay, that doesn't really matter, we're welcoming in a dangerous precedent where someone can be going before a judge, having their due process to have their case heard in front of a judge, and before they even have that chance, be arrested, detained by ICE, and shipped off to a slave labor like gulag camp in El Salvador. So the courtrooms are supposed to be kind of like a protected environment for people so that they can have their cases litigated. That's how the Constitution set it up. If you have undocumented people who are seeking to have their case heard in front of a judge for any sort of reason, and you have ICE that's right there ready to arrest those people, then it's not even safe for them to bring their case to have it be heard in front of a judge, which every person in the United States has the constitutional right to have their case be heard in front of a judge under due process with the 5th and 14th Amendments. And if you are MAGA who doesn't like the fact that due process exists, then sorry, you disagree with the Constitution. Which by your own definition makes you literally the opposite of a patriot. By using your own logic. But I guess your own logic, it doesn't matter if it doesn't serve you. So, point of all of that is, also, let me just, I'm going to say this in my soapbox for just a hot second. Why are people so afraid of undocumented immigrants? Why? No, don't say that they're here illegally, and I'm not looking at the chat, by the way. Ask yourself, if you're afraid of an undocumented immigrant, ask yourself, why? Why? And you say, oh, well, they're here legally. No. That's not a reason of why you're afraid of them. Just because they don't have what? I guess a paper to say that they're an official U.S. citizen? No. Why are you afraid of undocumented immigrants, which equals people? Why are you afraid of people? You say, oh, because they do crime. Well, so do U.S. citizens. So do U.S. citizens. In fact, U.S. citizens commit significantly more crime than an undocumented person. So wouldn't it be more valid for you to be afraid of U.S. citizens than an undocumented person? So no, get to the root of literally why. So all these people, all these right wingers say, "Oh, I'm so afraid of," or what is it? Oh, or like these undocumented immigrants are dangerous. They don't commit as much crime as U.S. citizens. And you say, well, they need to be locked, deported, all of that stuff. No, but why are you truly afraid of them? Why? You say they do crime, but the numbers show that they do significantly less crime than a U.S. citizen. Let's say, for instance, you were to legalize all the undocumented people in this country. That doesn't eliminate the possibility of that crime. You say, let's deport all those people. Yeah, but I thought, how about this? How about this? Isn't it a more valid thing to be afraid of U.S. citizens? U.S. citizens do significantly more crime. The reason I point all of that out is because you're afraid of someone because they don't have a check mark on a piece of paper showing that they're an official U.S. citizen. That's a pretty silly thing to be afraid of when you really think about it. Now, I'm not saying that it's right for people to be undocumented. I don't know of any, I actually know people who are undocumented personally. I do. They don't like the fact they're undocumented. They hate that. They want to be a citizen of the country. No undocumented person wants to be undocumented. It's not like a source of pride. It's seen as something that's a huge hindrance. They know being undocumented puts them in huge jeopardy, puts a target on their back. And after hearing the stories of those people, they're often fleeing violence from their countries, their respective countries. They're often fleeing persecution. I'm gay. I know other gay people who were fleeing from other countries. So the reason I say all of that is like, if you're like, oh, you know, they're undocumented, they need to be deported. Why are you truly afraid of those people? What is the core root of your fear? You say, oh, because they do crime. Again, they don't do as much crime as U.S. citizens. They just don't. Isn't it smarter to be afraid of U.S. citizens then? The reason why people are so afraid of undocumented immigrants is specifically because Fox News told them to be. If you're a right winger living out your life and you run into people, and do you ask everyone their citizenship status? I guarantee that you don't. You're afraid of criminals, but not all undocumented people are dangerous criminals. So when you really want to pinpoint the root of your fear, so you're like, oh, this person's undocumented. Okay. Does it warrant being afraid of them? Does it warrant being afraid of them? Again, it's not right for them to be here without proper documentation. But does it warrant then you being afraid because they don't have an official checkbox saying that they are like a citizen? Or are you just afraid of undocumented people because Fox News and the right-wing media told you to be? Just saying. So, going back to this situation here, when our government turns our courtrooms into traps, they are betraying the very laws they claim to defend. If there is a case, if there's an undocumented person who's been accused of doing wrong, who's been accused of doing something nefarious, great. They need to have their day in court, go under due process, display the evidence to see if they need to be officially prosecuted, charges need to be filed. That's how the law works. That's how our system works. Now, if you have ICE agents literally going in there saying that, oh, we're just going to arrest the person anyway, it goes against the due process in this country. And here's the thing. I think that truly right-wingers, they don't care about the Constitution right to due process. They don't. You have many people on the right saying that we don't care about due process if it comes to undocumented people. Just deport them. Just deport them. Just deport them. But when you really look at it, if you believe that due process is only for citizens, then you're literally going against the Constitution. No person. It says no person. This is the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. It doesn't say citizen, it says person. So if there's any people in here who believe, oh, well, you're undocumented, that gives you that means that you are a criminal, that you must be deported. You do realize that it literally has in here protections for everyone. Undocumented does not mean that you are a criminal. It doesn't. Also, it's important to note why people are fleeing. It doesn't make it right. But also, again, why is this right-winger's top issue? Let me also just say the right, Fox News and the right constantly make fear-mongering about people not being here legally as their biggest issue because they're seeking to distract you from economic issues. The Republican Party is crap when it comes to their economic policy. They literally are doing tax cuts for the rich. They're trying to take away the ability for people to collectively join unions. They're doing tariffs. Economically, the Republican Party is a disaster. So what do they feed their base? Fear-mongering about undocumented people. Pointing fingers while they... Pointing fingers over to the brown guy when they're hacking into your bank account at the same time. Meanwhile, the pointing fingers at the brown guy has grave human rights injustices, but also directly affects negatively everyone. So, pinpointing like the real concern that all these right-wingers have, y'all have been manufactured for your outrage against undocumented people. I guarantee that you've run into people who are undocumented. I guarantee that you personally have run into people that are trans or non-binary. Like, do they seem like a threat to you? It's all a manufactured fear and hysteria in order to distract you. And you can even say that sometimes amongst Democrats. They spend so much time trying to talk about defending the human rights of other people. They don't often talk about the economic status of what needs to happen for true equality and equity in this country. So, again, the Constitution applies to everyone, not just citizens. So no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. It also says in the 14th Amendment, it sets aside some specific protections for citizens, but then goes through and specifically says, nor shall any state deprive any person, not citizen, person, of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. It is important to believe in the due process of everyone. Support the due process of everyone. Donald Trump has the right to due process when it came to all of his alleged crimes. He did. If there is evidence to show that you've done wrong, let that be the beacon. The people who try to erode due process, you want to know why you try to do that? Because you don't have evidence to back up your claim. Why would you try to erode the idea of due process? Because you don't have the proper receipts. You want to use your accusation as evidence to then warrant discipline. But that's not how our system works. If you truly thought that, if you truly had evidence to show wrongdoing, you'd want to bring it in court. So, all that being said, everything happening with this case with Hannah Dugan, I'm not saying that she is not done wrong. She literally was overseeing the trial of this guy who's an undocumented person who's been alleged to have done battery or assault. That's bad. It's an alleged. Every single person has the right under the 5th and 14th Amendment and the Constitution broadly to have their case be heard. Now, when the police come through with an administrative warrant, which again is the wrong type of warrant, it's the wrong type of warrant. You can't go to a courtroom seeking the arrest of someone unless you get the judge to sign off. Well, guess what? They came in with the wrong warrant and attempted to arrest the person anyway. You're literally obstructing the ability for the executive branch to carry out their duties that they took an oath to swear to in the Constitution. When you prohibit someone from doing their job, they're going to get angry. They're going to get angry. She was literally doing her job. And also, this person, this guy, was literally on trial, facing accountability for what he had been alleged of doing. He was not just out on the street. You know, ICE likes to say, oh, we're going through and we're trying to get rid of criminals off the streets. Why? This is not a street. The courtroom is literally the courtroom. It's not a street. This kind of situation sets a dangerous example, a dangerous precedent going forward. Put yourself in this situation. If I accuse you of doing something awful and we go to court, and if I accuse you as an outside party of doing something, we go to court, and let's say that let me like really think through this example really quickly. Hold on. If I accuse you of doing something wrong, you say, well, I have a right to defend myself. Right. But let me just say, what if I tried to take away that ability for you to defend yourself? You'd say, well, that's unfair. That's gaslighting. That's wrong. Yet that's what the right wing seeks to do for people in this country. That's what they're seeking to do for people in this country. They don't care about it. You're not going to care about due process until it affects you. And this is the thing. Democrats sound like a broken record saying, like, we care about due process. We care about due process. You should care about due process, because if it goes for someone else, you say, oh, well, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Oh, it goes for someone else. It doesn't care. It doesn't affect me. When it comes for you, guess what? The people that would be in your corner are going to be like, FAFO, you found out. We tried to warn you. Hence, what it really comes down to is the right wing is literally trying to erode the foundations of empathy and consideration in this country. And it's just sad. It's just sad. So, with this case here, it is possible that the judge truly did do wrong, evading this person from being arrested. It's very possible. But also put in context, where this person literally was doing her job, overseeing the trial of this person. This judge was doing her job, overseeing the trial of this guy. This judge comes in without the police come in without the proper warrant, seeking the arrest of someone, superseding and usurping your authority in your own courtroom. Yeah, that'd make me kind of pissed. Doesn't make her response correct, but puts it in context. Anyway, I need to skedaddle because it's getting close to, it's actually past 12 now. So I appreciate every single one of you. Even if you don't like me, I hope that you all learned stuff from the live stream. If this was y'all's first time here, then please, it was the proper warrant. No, Scott, it wasn't. That's objective misinformation. It's so frustrating. It was not the proper warrant. Let me share with you something. It was an administrative warrant. If you're going to enter a courtroom, you need something called a judicial warrant. You need a judicial warrant in order to arrest someone in a courtroom. Like, the type of warrant really matters because they carry different levels of authority. So, administrative warrant doesn't mean that the subject is being charged with a crime. It's more similar to subpoenas, using it as an investigative tool. Judicial warrants are issued by courts and give law enforcement officers the power to arrest people anywhere, including in private spaces. Administrative warrants do not allow for people to be arrested in a courtroom. That has to be signed off by a judge. It wasn't. This case is about process. Nobody is above the law. Right. Nobody is above the law. But you're not listening to what I'm saying here. Like, you're not listening to what I'm saying here. And that's the thing. I'm not going to try to convince you of it. You cannot reason with anyone. You cannot have a good dialogue with people who refuse to listen. So, anyway, I appreciate every single one of you. Yeah, no, they truly do need mental health. They truly do need mental health. If this is your first time viewing me, say hello in the chat here real quick. If this is your first time viewing me, just say hello in the chat really quickly. I appreciate every single one of you. Even if you don't like me. Oh, I see some new people. Hello. Hello. Someone said bye. Someone said, no, you need mental health. You need mental help. Steve, sweetheart, I have been doing this for the longest time. I'm literally just explaining due process, political science, and all of that. I think that the people who constantly seek to get my attention through petty insults over the internet need more help than me. So, that all being said, I just encourage you to actually seek out what you claim that I need. So it's so funny that people try to do that kind of stuff. Anyway, I see some new people in here. If you enjoyed the live stream, please make sure to smash that follow button. Please make sure to follow button, that subscribe button. I love all of you, even if you don't like me. LOL, I'm sorry, y'all ignorant. Are you talking about me or the other people in the chat? So I appreciate every single one of you, even if you don't like me. I hope that my explanation provided some good context for people. So, I like trolls, they're comically stupid. Yeah. I don't even know what that is supposed to be there. Just reading some of these comments, some people are really weird. I'm about to end the live stream, sorry about that. But all of my live streams are posted. So anyway, shout out to all of my amazing mods in here. Y'all are incredible. Cherie, I love you. Kate, Ellie, Jenny, Ilisa, Akicha, Joanna Tech. Y'all are incredible. So I appreciate every single one of you. Just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, you are valid, you are strong, and you are fierce. Don't let anyone or anything ever, 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 ever dim your shine. Aww. Oh, look at all the positive comments. I love you all so much. Bye.